And then all of a sudden we got a letter in the mail from a company that
Hmm.
said and we don't need to mention the company,
Okay.
but they said that is our pattern.
Uh-huh.
They had it
And
trademarked.
Oh.
and it was a trademarked plaid.
Okay.
So a very commonly used plaid, and I think that this company obviously has like an entire legal department
Yeah.
just going after people that use this plaid. But honestly, the second we saw it, we were like, oh my gosh.
Welcome back to Founders Forum. My name is Kayla, and this is Gregory.
Hello.
Today we have two very special guests, Rachel and Stacy from Rainraps. They've been featured everywhere from Oprah's List to Good Housekeeping and Forbes, and we are so excited to have you both on the pod. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you for having us.
Sweet. So, as we've mentioned in our past podcasts, this podcast is to learn more about the entrepreneurial journey, the ups and downs. So, let's just get started from the beginning. Can you tell us a little bit more about kind of how and why you initially started Rainraps and what that kind of journey was like up until today?
So it started 13 years ago
Oh,
on a
wow.
hot, humid day in May of 2011. And first of all, Rachel and I both moved here from cities. I came from New York, she came from Chicago, and we moved to Richmond, Virginia, where it's hot and humid and we are we are in a car all the time. So in New York City, I was walking around using an umbrella when we had rain. And when I moved to Richmond, Virginia, basically we were going in and out of a car and I couldn't figure out the whole umbrella. I was getting more wet, putting it in the back seat or putting it in the front. And so basically I never really used an umbrella and I would run in and out of my errands. And one day I was doing that and realized that this is ridiculous. Like I was always prepared with my pashmina for the cold weather and just needed something for the elements. So we wanted a pashmina for the elements. So I went online to look for it, couldn't find it. And so we decided to go ahead and try to make it. And Rachel is very entrepreneurial and she had all these businesses she was starting and she was, my best friend here in Richmond. So I called her up and I was like, what do you think of this idea? So that's kind of where it began. We really created the Rainraps out of a need. I wanted one. It was too hot to put a coat on, so I just needed something to cover me up. So the very first rain wrap that we made we kind of laugh about it because it was just a wrap. It did not have a hood. It didn't have a button. It didn't, the product has definitely evolved since the beginning. But, it's just how kind of amateur we were. Like we didn't really know what we were doing, but we knew that we had this great idea that was missing in the women's accessories. So we like to refer to the rain wrap as like Kleenexes to the tissues. We really created, and we can proudly say 13 years later that there is a whole category now of wraps for women. So we're very proud of that. And so we didn't really, neither Rachel nor I had experience in starting a business. So we just very organically, Rachel kind of she had a journalism background. She's very tech savvy. And as I said, entrepreneurial. She had started a couple other businesses. So she, kind of took over and reached out to her friend who's a trademark attorney. She registered, Rainraps, got our business license. She went and did all the technical business stuff while I started designing it. And then together we had, it was very, it's funny to think about it now, but we were very secretive about it because we were like, we know we have this great idea
Yeah.
And we weren't even really telling anybody, which
Was
is
that
so funny to me now because
Yeah.
obviously no one's going to just start going, especially our friends, and start and go out and create this company. But we did share it with one of our girlfriends
Mhm.
whose father had just retired from manufacturing
Oh,
men's shirts,
okay.
and he
Oh,
manufactured them in
wow.
China.
Mhm.
So
Okay.
she said, you need to speak to my father.
Yeah.
So Rachel and I met with Morty Brown,
Huh.
had coffee, told him our idea, and he thought we were crazy. He was like,
Really?
"Oh, I don't really know what kind of idea that is, you know." So he
Yeah.
said, but I have a guy, my broker, who I feel terrible because I just put him out of work because I retired and he
Mhm.
had been my connection
Yeah.
and broker for, you know, the last 25 years. And I will connect you with him. And he walked us through kind of how you communicate with him and
Interesting.
how to write the purchase order. And
Yeah.
so again, it was very amateur in the sense that like now we use Pantone colors to communicate color. At the time we went to like our local fabric store and picked out, you know, thread
Oh,
and
wow.
yarn, the color, you know, the color that
Yeah.
we wanted, because he said you just need to be super detailed. So we have 13 years later,
Yeah.
Ken, the broker that Morty introduced us to, is our guy. And
Wow.
Loyalty.
been
Yeah.
amazing. Everything in the beginning, as far as from the idea to manufacturing, took 6 months. The idea was in May, and
Mhm.
we launched in January. So it really was super quick. It was, you know, anything we didn't know, we had the internet to look up. So Rachel, you know,
Yeah.
Rachel's the one who took over in that regard. Rachel was very instrumental in getting us a lot of press. She, at the time, this could be one of the secrets, but I don't know if our children will be watching, but Rachel's children, her daughter was on a modeling job, and Rachel met the stylist on that job,
Yeah.
had told her about this great, that Sarah Blakely had this leg up award from Spanx, you know, Sarah
Yeah.
Blakely.
Yep. I'm familiar.
And he's like, she was really into supporting women entrepreneurs and small businesses. So he told Rachel to apply for this job, you know, for this,
Oh.
not this job, to apply to this leg up award. And so we very early on were fortunate to be chosen as one of the recipients of Sarah Blakely's leg up award.
Wow. Very cool.
And the reason I'm bringing this up is because she has a great story of how she started, and
Yeah.
she, just like us, you know, she started with like taking with her footless pantyhose.
Yep.
So when she started creating them, she didn't know, for instance, what you were supposed to put on the label. So instead of like just thinking that she had to go hire someone to tell her, she went to the local department store, bought like 10 pairs of pantyhose, stockings, whatever you want to call them.
Mhm.
And she looked at all of the labels. She bought them all, looked at all of the labels, saw what was, you know, on all of them, and figured, okay, well, that's the information I have to have. And that's how she created her labels.
Yeah.
And
Mm.
it's really like, it's funny because it's really that simple. Like the information is all out there. So as intimidating as it sounds to start your own business, we really did it through the internet and just our own little
Yeah.
research. Many people go and they start hiring people, and
Right.
Yeah.
that is not really the route. And I will let Rachel continue from there.
Speaking, I do have a question for Rachel as well. Something that always fascinates me, especially with business partners, because we are business partners, but also life partners.
Yes.
I think you mentioned that you and Rachel started out as best friends. So something that always intrigues me is whether it's a family member or a friend, when you enter business with someone close to you at first, there's always risk that things don't work out, whether it's money or butting heads with making decisions. Rachel, how was that experience with you and Stacy in terms of like navigating the friendship and the business partner aspect of it?
I mean, knock on wood, we haven't run into any issues. I mean, obviously nothing is perfect, and there are going to be moments where we might have a disagreement or not agree 100% on something, but it's never anything that is that important that we need to like argue about it or it's going to cause a major rift between us. And I think also, I don't know, I can't speak for Stacy, but our friendship has always come first. And, sometimes you have to remember that too. Like, we call each other after a weekend or we haven't spoken in a couple of days or, we have something business wise to talk about, after we've gotten down to business, either before or after, it's always like, okay, well, so tell me about your weekend or, what's up with the kids, like making sure we're still connected that way also.
That's really validating to hear.
Yeah.
Because we kind of go through similar things. We always put our relationship first.
Yes.
And always try to remember that.
Yeah.
Something that always fascinates me too is you guys mentioned it's been 13 years now. And I think when people see success stories, they're visible because they're successful now, right? Which is like you guys. I'm sure there are a ton of failures along the 13-year journey, maybe.
Maybe not.
And just curious, like, what are some of like the major failures over the past 13 years and how did you guys overcome those failures?
I mean, I'm trying to think and I'm not sounding cocky. I don't think we have had, again, knock on wood, any major failures ourselves with it. I mean, obviously the pandemic was a big problem and has definitely still hurt our business. We sell wholesale to a lot of mom and pop type stores and boutiques around the country. And after the pandemic hit, a lot of those stores didn't make it. So obviously like that hurt our business. And I don't know, Stace, can you think of, I mean, we make mistakes. I mean, we definitely make mistakes. Every time we have a photo shoot, we're like, oh shoot, we got to remember to do this because we didn't do it last time. And then after the photo shoot, we're like, oh no, we forgot this. So, I mean, there's still obviously things that we don't get 100% right. But again, I think we're lucky that we haven't had any major failure, have we, Stace?
Well, you're
What?
forgetting one really innocent but serious thing that happened to us.
What is it?
So Rachel knows she's just having a.
No, I don't. I'm having a moment. Yeah.
You're having a moment
Yeah.
when I say it. So I would say this was very early on, maybe 3 years in or 4 years in. What would happen is in the beginning, we just did colors. And so we were safe and we did solids and everything's reversible. So and then all of a sudden we decided we were going to do some prints.
Okay. Yeah.
And so we very innocently chose a pattern that our factory this is the only time we kind of didn't do us good. He sent us all these patterns and fabric swatches that he went to the market and would send us, and we would pick things, and we had lots of success with a couple of them. And one of them became like our bestseller. And then all of a sudden we got a letter in the mail from a company that said that is and we don't need to mention the company, but they said that is our pattern.
They had a trademark.
And it was a trademarked plaid and a very commonly used plaid. And I think that this company obviously has like an entire legal department just going after people that use this plaid. But honestly, the second we saw it, we were like, oh my gosh, we had it was just a complete innocent thing. And then we just assumed that this very large company would trust that we would stop selling, which we did, of course. And then it was just interesting that they continued to go really like after previous sales. And so it was definitely like a hardship, and we had to dispose of merchandise, at a place that shreds or destroys your merchandise. So that was a big lesson for us, you
Mhm.
know, to understand, and innocent, and also seemed very unfair that here,
Yeah.
this very small company, I mean, we'd only been like, I can't remember what year it was, but it was only a few years in, and we couldn't really afford to have a big portion of our merchandise not saleable. So
Yeah.
that was a very big lesson. And I mean, to me, it was an innocent mistake. And then it also was a very big life lesson in the sense that the big guy doesn't always care about the small guy.
Yeah.
I was gonna ask actually, like, what was the lesson, and how did you guys change operating moving forward for like similar scenarios?
I mean, the lesson was that to make sure that prints that we use are not trademarked,
Ah, I
or,
see.
you know,
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's very rare that you have that type of situation.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think it's this one company that, like, obviously we learned that they have, you know, doesn't matter the color, they owned the plaid. So,
Okay.
I mean, I just think doing our due diligence,
Right,
and
right.
I think that was really the main thing.
Yeah.
Cool.
That's interesting. I mean, I'm sure that was like, I'm sure when you got that letter, I can only imagine myself being like, oh, snap. Like, we've got something going on here. We got to move through it. So, like, what were those kind of conversations like? How did you guys put your heads together? Like, because obviously you got out of it. So, what was that kind of like decision making like moving forward from that? And at the time, was it like, oh, shoot, we're sunk? Or was it like, okay, we're just gonna roll with this for a little while?
I mean, I don't think we ever thought we were sunk. I think we, obviously knew we had to do right. We didn't, we knew we were in the wrong, even though it was innocent, we were wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So they gave us a list of what they wanted us to do.
Mm.
And, we spoke with our lawyer, and our lawyer went back with them, and we kind of all just came to an agreement with how it was going to be handled, and that's what we did. And then afterwards we went back and we just changed the pattern slightly, that it was no longer their trademark, but we could still sell it.
I'm glad to hear that, clearly it worked out, because here we are 13 years later. I'm curious now to pivot then. So that was kind of like a moment of hardship. Luckily, there hasn't been too many. I want to hear a little bit more about, like, what was your transition to success? Like, where was the point where you were like, okay, this is really working? Like, what were the indications that you knew it was working, and what were kind of the decisions you made based off of that?
I mean, I think for me, I really thought like, oh my gosh, this is going to be big, and we've really tapped into something, was when we started to get all the press. So we had a PR, we had a woman who did our PR right at the beginning, and she started to get us a lot of press. And, the Spanx hit, Oprah, we were in Good Housekeeping. And then before even, we were on the Today Show, and we won a contest on the Today Show where we were up against other products, and then we were voted on. And I probably think at that point I was like, wow, this is pretty cool. But
yeah,
never get too ahead of yourselves, because that changes very quickly. So it's kind of like I say to my kids a lot, when things are going well, like, just enjoy it, but don't get ahead of yourself, because it changes very quickly.
Slightly related question. I think I asked this to everyone, but a statistic that we've heard is that it takes about 2 to 3 years for businesses to break even, basically. And so we were wondering, how long from when you started the company to when you broke even? Because I think you said it took 6 months to do manufacturing. So I'm guessing that's all like loss. But at what point did you guys break even in the company?
Well, so when we started, used our personal money between, the two of us, and we paid ourselves back within, I think,
within the first year, I think it was.
well, definitely the
wow.
first year. I almost think like by April or something.
That's awesome.
You know,
Yeah.
it was, oh, sorry. I was muted because he was just,
Podcast
he was
guest.
just, but
Yeah, it was definitely fairly quick, but within
That's
the
awesome.
first year, we were able to pay ourselves back. Yeah.
Wow.
We watch a lot of Shark Tank, and in these pitches, they're like, well, they'll start off with like, we made X million in sales, and then they find out like, oh, they're still not profitable. So I think at least for us, it's kind of unique to find people who break even within the first year.
Yeah, definitely. I'm curious then too, like, it sounded like, Rachel, you had a lot of like other business ventures that was happening in the past, but I'm curious for this one particularly, did you have like a mentor or someone that was kind of guiding you through this process other than maybe your manufacturer that was helping you out to allow you to get to that break-even point so quickly?
I mean, I don't think we did. I think it was beneficial that like Stacy and I had each other, that we were in it together. I mean, I know people who've started businesses and they do it themselves. And, they're always like, I wish I had somebody to like bounce ideas off of or to talk it through. I think, one thing also Stacy and I did was we basically talked to anybody that we thought could help us. And even if they couldn't help us, we always walked away with something good from a conversation. I think we used our networking to talk to people, to get connected with people. And from there, like that just, kept getting us to the next step, the next step, the next step. So it was just kind of reaching out to anybody who we thought might be beneficial.
Yeah.
Were you guys doing this full time? Like when you started the company, did you guys have no other source of income? It's just let's go all in onto the company?
Yes. I mean, we were both
Wow.
kind of stay-at-home moms.
Mm-hmm.
Our kids are the same age and they were, still young. And like I said, we had both been working and commuting to Chicago and New York after we moved to Richmond. I didn't say that. But so when I had my first child, I had to stop commuting, and Rachel did it for another year, I think, after her daughter was born.
Mm-hmm.
But so we both kind of, I always say if I never left New York, I'd still be working because I didn't want to necessarily stop working. It just kind of was situational. And with what I did, I wasn't able to really do it in Virginia. So I was saying that Rachel was, she had her hands in a bunch of different things. So she was always looking to do something, but it kind of happened on accident.
That's awesome. It's a lucky accident then. Happy accident.
Yeah, no, it was great. And in the beginning, I think we had decided, we had the idea, we were going to manufacture it. And it was in the beginning where all these online things were really just kind of starting, where people were shopping online. So we were just planning on doing direct to consumer through our website. So we did hire this woman, Joni, that Rachel had mentioned, to be a publicist, to be our publicist. And she was given to us through a connection, a friend of Rachel's, or introduced to us. And she had just left the editorial world. So she was awesome and had all these wonderful, connections. And we were so fortunate, but she kept saying, like, right away, we launched in January, and in April, we were in Good Housekeeping, and in May, we were in Oprah.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it all happened super fast, which is that's why we were able to, pay ourselves back, because we got, such great press.
Yeah.
And she even said, she's like, I just want you to know this is not normal. I don't want you to expect this, constantly.
Right.
But I think what it is, and what we like to tell people, because we have a local woman that just started a business here in Richmond that we were talking to, and she asked the question, like, was it worth it? Is it worth it to get a publicist?
Yeah.
And I do think that we had such a new idea that people want to write about something new and exciting. And so I think we had that as that was in our, to our advantage, that it was a unique, original item that was, new to the industry. So people were happy and excited to write about it and to feature it. So, yeah. And then, I don't know, what was it, like 2 years later, where then, you having all this press, and then stores, of course, find out about the product and they want to carry you.
Yeah.
So then our business kind of transitioned from mostly direct to consumer and relying on the press, and to basically having sales reps and going to trade shows and
wow.
selling wholesale. So
Expansion happened
Right.
really quick then, relatively.
Right. So we kind of like started really big, and then wholesale, we were like, oh, now we're just like a regular company.
Yeah.
We had a lot of excitement in the beginning.
Definitely helps.
Speaking
Yeah.
of your publicist, I think something that we are constantly reevaluating at least once a quarter, if not every month, is like how to reinvest the profits. And it sounds like you guys were able to pay yourself off within the first year. So I feel like it's always a tough balance of like, okay, we have this much in profit. How much of that where do we put that profit, right? Do we reinvest in like materials or people, like a publicist, or like advertising? Like, what would you recommend to allocate when you start to break even? Where would you first allocate your profits? And then how do you do that along, like over time? Like where did, allocate the profits basically?
I mean, I think we've been successful and been able to continue to grow or stay in business even because we are very careful as to, what we take out of the company and what we reinvest in the company.
Mhm.
And that is pretty much like just like you said, like monthly. We don't have anything like set in stone about what percentage we reinvest. It's kind of like what's hot, like, okay, we need new inventory. So that's going to happen in 4 months. We're going to have to pay for that. So, this is what we have. We need to put all of that into new inventory. Okay, well, we want to invest some money. Like Stacy was saying, we flip-flopped between putting money direct to consumer versus wholesale. Doing trade shows costs a lot of money. Obviously, you guys are in the Google advertising, Facebook advertising, that costs a lot of money. So we go back and forth to see what works. So for a while, we were just doing trade shows, and then we decided let's pull back on some trade shows and put more money into direct to consumer and getting people to our website. And then it's just like balancing it out. Now we're back to, okay, let's pull some money out of that and go back and do a trade show, and then we have inventory, and then maybe we do need to get a publicist and put some money there. And if you can't take something, then you can't take anything out, for your personal use as well. Like, I think that's just how it works for us.
Yeah, it was cool to hear about the publicist because it sounded like, that was kind of like a key and kind of like a growth point in your company.
Yeah, absolutely.
And something that we're learning is like, for functions that require more than one people as you grow, sometimes it's worth paying a premium on someone who does a better job versus getting two people who are kind of mediocre.
Yeah.
Have you guys had experience like that in your company where it's like, oh, okay, we can get another person for the same price, or how about we just pay one person that's 1.5 times the salary of another person, but they're just so much better? Have you guys had any experience with that?
I mean, it's really just the two of us.
Oh, really? Wow. Okay.
It has been. We have everyone that's outsourced. We have our bookkeeper, we have our fulfillment house, we have a guy that does Google and Facebook advertising. He manages all of that. We have a woman that does our creative and our social media, and we've had interns over, the summers. We have a photographer, but no one is on our payroll other than us. Yeah. But the other thing I just wanted to add to how you decide where you're allocating things, we are constantly like trying things. So like if we hear of something, whether it's a different trade show or joining an organization, or we're always like, sounds good. Like we should try it. It can't hurt to try it. And we do spend money doing that. A lot of like trial and error, just going into a new industry. We're in the gift industry. We've put our toes into the travel industry. We've, invested things to go into the golf industry, and it's all just like, well, I don't know, maybe not, so we've just always been really open to trying things at least once, because you never know. So, and again, not obviously investing a ton of money into it, but we definitely dip our toes into things just to try it out.
That's validating and reassuring, because we are constantly in an internal dilemma about some people have the camp of like, in order to progress quickly in the beginning, you need to focus on like one thing, right? Like a magnifying glass, concentrating the power of the sun. But then also we're like, well, like, how are we going to learn if we don't try all these different things? So there's like the camp of like trial and error, try a lot of stuff. And there's the camp of like, just focus on one thing and you'll get really good and successful at that one thing. So we are constantly trying to navigate that change all the time.
Yes.
I think you just use your gut and your intuition, and
Mhm.
you and you can't look at it like so black and
Black and white,
white. Like
yes.
an opportunity might come up that wasn't in your
Mm.
plan, and you just need to make that decision at that point. Like you don't have to stick to a set rigid way.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I mean, we haven't, so I shouldn't speak for another for you all, but yeah.
Good.
And we always, in the beginning, we would have these big decisions to make, and
Mhm.
we felt like we were supposed to be taking a lot longer to analyze them. And we were like, I think we should do it. And Rachel's like, I think we should do it. And we're like, okay,
Yeah.
we're going to do it.
Yeah.
And sometimes, like I said, you just go with your gut, and
Mhm.
it's not, a lot of it is going with your gut and doing it your way. So it
Yeah.
doesn't matter what someone else does. It's really what you all think. And we've been really lucky that our roles have very organically, fell into place, I
Yeah.
would say.
Yeah.
Cool.
That is
Um,
very cool. I love hearing how that dynamic, I'm sure it shifted and moved too as the business shifted and moved across the years, like as you came across the problem with the pandemic or as you moved to more digital. So one of the things I'm actually curious about, because this is something I felt within myself in the last 14 months, I'm like, wow, I feel like I'm learning so much so quickly. Like I've never had an experience like this. So I'm curious, after all of the years of being in business and being an entrepreneur, is there any particular like lesson or kind of instance that changed the way you thought? Or maybe you're like, oh man, I would have never learned this if I wasn't in business right now.
I mean, probably a lot of different things, but nothing is like popping into my head at the moment. But I mean, probably just everything that we've learned, because there was definitely I didn't have a background, and I know Stacy, Stacy had a background in a certain aspect of the business, but like, I mean, other than like journalism and meeting planning, which is what I did prior, none of my prior experience or skills parlayed over to starting a business. So it was definitely a lot. And I do think about it. Like I think about, oh, what if, one of my children decided they wanted to start a business, and like, what would the steps be to help them do that? And I'm not sure I would even remember.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh wait, so how did we get the website? And then I do. We had a lot, again, like going back, like we had a lot of people who we utilized. Like Stacy's husband had a marketing person who he lent to us to help build our website.
Yeah.
So like we didn't have that expense at the beginning. We were using somebody, who did that for another company, and he was generous enough to let her use her time to help us. So that helped us as well. And like, then, I had a friend who was a lawyer, so we reached out to him, and he helped us, with trademark. And I think, again, it's like using your community and networking to figure out like how to get a lot of these, learn a lot. And
it takes a village.
Yeah. And what I'll say is, we just kind of one step at a time and did it without, like I said, Rachel just like looked up online, or we just figured it all out with the help of a lot of friends. But it's funny because, as I mentioned, we have a friend who was starting a business, who just started a business. We would sit with her and listen, and it's just funny how people do things totally different. And it does make you feel, I mean, when you've been doing something for the length of time that we've been doing it, we do know like how to do things. And
Yeah.
we know, at least in our industry, in the clothing industry, I don't know that I could tell you anything in your industry, but for like somebody starting a clothing line, we know what to do.
Yeah.
And so you definitely, and we used to meet with, I'm just thinking of that little Jen Nomberg, for example, like she came to us and I felt like we loved sharing and helping because we appreciated it from Morty, and everyone we got help from. So we like to pass it on, and you definitely feel like, wow, we really know what we're doing. And even when you hear someone talk, you're like, ooh, like, oh, I don't know if we should be spending that much money and all of this stuff. But we're always meeting with people that seem to be a couple steps behind us in their process. But then we will meet with someone, like when we met with Andy Jacobs, who is a friend of ours he's not such a good friend of ours, but a guy we know. We were actually on a panel with him years ago when we were first started. And we thought, he's like been doing this for way longer than us. He supports his family. Like we're not supporting our families here. He supports his family, and he's, really successful. And we met with him a few months ago. Yeah. And we're like, this is when we were like, we're just going to try to focus on direct to consumer because that's what he was doing. So I was like, Rachel, let's get together with Andy and see what he's doing. And we walked away from that. We were like, we knew all that. We're doing the same exact thing. Right? Like we walked away thinking like, wow, here we had him, or I did, put him on like a pedestal. Like he knew, and we reached out to see if he could, brainstorm with us a little and help us and make sure we were going in the right direction. And we were doing exactly what he was doing. So like, it's kind of like this full circle, like, wow. Yeah. We know what we're doing, so
feel validated.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, the time really went by.
I know. And it's already been 41 minutes.
Just want to thank you so much for coming on to our podcast. I was learning a lot from you guys.
Same.
So for all of our viewers out there,
yes.
If you have any questions for Rachel or Stacy, please put them in the comments and we will route them to Rachel and Stacy.
Yes.
And reply for you guys. Any more parting words to the viewers, Rachel and Stacy?
No, just thank you for having us and good luck with your journey. And thanks for reaching out.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Yes. And if you have an idea, don't be afraid to go for it.
That's awesome.
Words of wisdom.
You don't have to have any experience.
Yeah.
Right, if that's the takeaway.
Inspiring.
You need no experience.
Hey, Nike had it right. Their motto is just do it.
Just
so
do it.
They were onto something. They're onto something with that. For our listeners, we upload weekly, so please don't forget to like,
subscribe,
and hit that bell notification to follow us on our journey and to tune into many more amazing podcasts with entrepreneurs. All right. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
All right.
That was awesome.